The great hall on Nexus Prime buzzed with voices from across the galaxy. Representatives from 47 different worlds sat in their floating chairs, waiting for the morning session to begin. The massive dome above them showed the stars beyond, a reminder of how vast their empire had become. Ambassador Zektar walked slowly to the center platform. His green scales caught the light as he moved, and his hands shook slightly. He had been preparing for this moment for months, ever since. His scouts returned from the Sol system with their disturbing reports. The other council members barely looked up when he began to speak. Most were busy with their own conversations or reviewing data on their personal screens. Only a few bothered to listen as Zektar cleared his throat and started his presentation. "Fellow council members," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber, "I must speak to you about a matter of great importance. My scouts have completed their study of the third planet in the Sol system. The inhabitants call their world Earth." Admiral Kexrath of the Dominion fleet let out a small laugh. His insect-like features twisted into what passed for a smile among his people. Earth, that backward little world, what could possibly be important about such a primitive place? Zektar activated the holographic display above the platform. Images appeared showing a blue and green world, with large masses of land surrounded by vast oceans. Then came pictures of the creatures that lived there. Bipedal mammals with soft skin and no natural weapons. They looked weak and fragile. "These beings call themselves humans," Zektar continued. "At first glance, they appear to be exactly what you think. They have no claws, no armor, no poison. They cannot fly, and they are not particularly strong. But my friends, looks can be very misleading." More images appeared. These showed human cities, human machines, and human weapons. The council members began to pay more attention as they saw the strange metal birds that humans used to fly through, their skies and the massive ships they built to cross their oceans. "Their technology is unusual," Zektar explained. "They discovered fire only a few thousand cycles ago, yet they have already learned to split the atom. They went from first flight to space travel in less than 70 cycles. This rate of advancement is unlike anything we have seen before." Council member Thaisara waved one of her tentacles dismissively. "So they learn quickly. Many species do when they are young. They will slow down as they mature, just like all the others." "That is what I thought too," Zektar replied. "But then I studied their history more carefully." The display changed to show scenes of human warfare. Battles with swords and shields, then with guns and cannons, then with flying machines dropping bombs from the sky. "They fight constantly," he said, "not just with other species, but with each other. They have had thousands of wars throughout their history. They create weapons from everything they touch. They turn their farming tools into spears. They use their knowledge of chemistry to make explosives. When they learn to fly, they immediately put weapons on their flying machines." General Vexmore of the Hegemony Warfleet stood up from his chair, his forearms crossed as he looked at the display with boredom. "So they are violent. Most young species are. They will calm down once we show them their place in the galaxy." "You are not understanding me," Zektar said, his voice becoming more urgent. "Look at this data carefully." New numbers appeared on the display, showing human population growth, resource usage, and technological development over time. 15 cycles ago, they fought a war that should have destroyed their entire civilization. They dropped atomic weapons on their own cities. Millions died. Their world was poisoned. Any reasonable species would have learned to avoid such destruction. The council members nodded. This made sense to them. Most civilized species had one great war that taught them the value of peace. But humans did not learn to avoid war, Zektar continued. Instead, they learned to make better weapons. They studied the destruction and figured out how to make it worse. Within 10 cycles, they had weapons that could destroy their entire planet 100 times over. A few council members looked slightly concerned, but most still seemed unimpressed. And yet, Zektar pressed on, they did not destroy themselves. Instead, they used the fear of destruction to push their science forward even faster. They went to their moon. They built space stations. They sent machines to other planets in their system, all while pointing enough weapons at each other to end all life on their world. The display showed human space missions, their robots on Mars, their telescopes looking deep into space. It also showed their military bases, their missile silos, and their naval fleets. "They are not like us," Zektar said. "When we face a problem, we think carefully and find the safest solution. When humans face a problem, they try things that should not work, and somehow, they often do work." He showed them footage of human test pilots flying experimental aircraft, human soldiers using tactics that violated all military logic, human scientists conducting experiments that seemed incredibly dangerous. "They strapped themselves to controlled explosions to reach space," he said. "They dive to the bottom of their deepest oceans in metal containers. They climb their highest mountains for no reason except to prove they can do it. They take risks that would terrify any rational being." Council member Thaisara made a sound that might have been laughter. "So they are reckless fools. That makes them easier to defeat, not harder." "No," Zektar said, his voice rising. "You are still not seeing it. They are not fools. They are incredibly clever. But they think differently than we do. When they encounter something impossible, they do not accept it. They find a way to make it possible." The display changed again, showing human innovations, how they learned to make fire underwater, how they built flying machines heavier than air, how they sent messages instantly across their entire world. Every time their scientists said something could not be done, their engineers found a way to do it anyway. Every time their military faced impossible odds, their soldiers found new tactics. They have a saying, "Failure is not an option." And they seem to mean it literally. General Vexmore laughed loudly. "You want us to fear a species that has not even left their own star system? My fleet has conquered a dozen worlds. These humans have barely reached their own moon." "That is exactly why you should fear them," Zektar replied. "They have had no contact with other intelligent species. Everything they have learned, they figured out by themselves, and they learned it incredibly fast." He paused, looking around, the chamber at the faces of his fellow council members. Most looked bored or amused. A few seemed slightly interested, but none appeared convinced. "I have one final piece of evidence," he said. The display showed a human military exercise with soldiers training for combat. "Watch how they prepare for war." The footage showed humans practicing in harsh environments, pushing themselves beyond their physical limits, learning to fight with damaged equipment and limited supplies. "Most species train their warriors to fight under ideal conditions," Zektar explained. "Humans train to fight when everything goes wrong. They prepare for their weapons to fail, their communications to be cut, their supplies to run out. They train to keep fighting when any reasonable being would surrender." The chamber was quiet now. Even the most dismissive council members were paying attention. "I am telling you," Zektar said, "we should leave these humans alone. We should mark their system as restricted and have no contact with them until they develop space travel on their own. They are not ready to join galactic civilization, and we are not ready for them." General Vexmore stood again. "Enough of this foolishness. I have requested permission to expand hegemony territory into the Sol system. These humans will be relocated to appropriate worlds where they can be properly supervised. The matter is simple." "It is not simple," Zektar shouted. "You are about to make the greatest mistake in galactic history." But the vote had already been decided before the session began. The hegemony was powerful and Earth looked like easy prey. When the final count was announced, only Zektar's delegation voted against the invasion. As the other council members filed out of the chamber, chatting about more important matters, Zektar remained on the platform. He stared at the display, still showing images of humans at work and war and play. "You have no idea what you have just awakened," he whispered to the empty room. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council voted to approve the invasion. General Vexmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Inevitable Conquest, watching the small blue planet grow larger on his screens. Behind him stretched a fleet of 300 warships, the largest invasion force ever assembled for such a minor target. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving multiple transmissions from the planet's surface. They appear to be attempts at communication. Vexmore clicked his mandibles in amusement. Of course they want to talk. They can see our fleet. Terror makes all species reasonable. He gestured with one of his forearms. Send them the standard surrender demand. Make it simple enough for primitives to understand. The message went out across all human communication channels. In dozens of languages, the same words appeared. This is the Hegemony War Fleet. Your world is now under our protection. Surrender all weapons immediately. Resistance will result in your destruction. You have 1 solar day to comply. On Earth, chaos erupted in every major city. President Lisa Carter stood in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by military advisors and scientists. The screens around them showed the alien fleet hanging in space like a dark cloud between Earth and Mars. What are our options? She asked General Pete Murphy, chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Murphy's face was grim. Honestly, Madam President, we have 1 experimental spacecraft and a handful of nuclear missiles. Against 300 alien ships, we might as well throw rocks. Dr. Danny Rodriguez from the SETI program raised his hand nervously. We could try negotiating. Maybe they want resources we can trade for our freedom. No. The voice came from Captain Jake Morrison, who had been standing quietly in the corner. As commander of the experimental ship Defiance, he was Earth's only space combat officer. I've been studying their formation. This isn't a diplomatic mission. They're positioned for a full planetary assault. President Carter looked at him carefully. What do you recommend, Captain? Morrison straightened his shoulders. We fight. Even if we lose, we show them that Earth won't go quietly. Maybe that will make them think twice about what comes next. 1 ship against 300? Dr. Rodriguez asked. That's suicide. Maybe, Morrison replied, but it's our suicide to choose. 2 hours later, the Defiance launched from the secret military facility in Nevada. The ship was humanity's first attempt at combining human engineering with recovered alien technology from a crash site in Russia 20 years earlier. It should not have been able to fly, much less fight, but human engineers had made it work. Through sheer stubborn determination, Morrison's crew was small but dedicated. Lisa Park, his chief engineer, had volunteered despite having 2 young children at home. Ryan Bell, the weapons officer, was a former fighter pilot who understood that this mission was likely one way. Amy Foster handled communications and had insisted on coming despite never having left Earth's atmosphere before. Captain, Amy reported as they cleared Earth's gravity well, I'm picking up transmissions from the surface. Every major city is broadcasting messages of support. Morrison smiled grimly. Below them, humanity was watching their lone defender head out to face impossible odds. He activated the ship's communication system. This is Captain Morrison of Earth Defense Command. He broadcast on all frequencies, knowing the aliens would intercept it. You want our planet? Come and take it. The response from General Vexmore was swift and condescending. Small ship, you are greatly outnumbered. Surrender now, and your crew will be relocated safely. Continue this foolishness, and you will be destroyed. Thanks for the warning, Morrison replied. But we'll take our chances. What happened next violated every principle of civilized warfare that the galaxy had developed over thousands of years. Instead of retreating or attempting to negotiate, the human ship accelerated directly toward the alien fleet. Are they insane? Asked Commander Hexra, Vexmore's second-in-command. Apparently, Vexmore replied. Send 3 scouts to disable them, make it quick. The Defiance met the alien scouts in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Morrison had chosen the location carefully. The space around them was filled with floating rocks, some as large as buildings. Lisa, I need everything you can give. Me, Morrison called to his engineer. Already on it, Captain, Park replied from the engine room. But I'm not sure how long these modifications will hold together. The first alien scout came in fast, expecting an easy target. Instead, the Defiance used the asteroids for cover, popping out to fire quick bursts before disappearing again. Morrison's tactics made no sense to the alien pilot, who had been trained for honorable combat in open space. Ryan, can you target those floating rocks? Morrison asked his weapons officer. Sir, you want me to shoot asteroids? Trust me on this. Bell targeted a massive asteroid floating between them and the second alien scout. The human weapons, cruder but more powerful than their alien equivalents, shattered the rock into thousands of high-speed fragments. The alien ship, not expecting such a primitive tactic, flew directly into the debris cloud. Their shields are down, Amy reported excitedly. The rock fragments overloaded their defense system. Morrison grinned. Lisa, give me ramming speed. Captain, that's crazy, Park protested. Exactly, they won't expect it. The Defiance crashed into the disabled alien scout at full acceleration. Both ships were badly damaged, but the human vessel had been built with human military philosophy. In mind, if something is worth doing, it's worth overdoing. We're still flying, Park reported with amazement. Barely, but we're still flying. The third alien scout hesitated. This was not how combat was supposed to work. The primitive ship should have been destroyed easily, yet it had somehow disabled one of their vessels and damaged another. General Vexmore watched the impossible scene from his flagship. How are they still fighting? Their technology is centuries behind ours. Sir, his tactical officer reported, they appear to be using debris and asteroids as weapons. They're also employing ramming attacks. These tactics are unprecedented. Barbaric, Vexmore corrected. No civilized species fights like this. But the barbarian tactics were working. The remaining alien scout, confused and demoralized by facing an enemy that refused to follow the rules, made a critical error. It exposed its flank while trying to understand the human strategy. Ryan Bell didn't hesitate. The Defiance's crude but effective weapons tore through the scout's weakened shields and disabled its engines. 2 down, Morrison announced to his crew. Amy, send a message to Earth. Tell them we're still in the fight. The message that reached Earth was simple but powerful. This is Defiance. We hurt them. They can be beaten. Across the planet, something awakened in humanity. In Detroit, factory worker Pete Johnson began modifying industrial equipment into makeshift weapons. In Silicon Valley, programmer Kate Williams started coordinating global communication networks to share information about the alien technology. In Kansas, farmer Bill Thompson repurposed his agricultural drones for reconnaissance. The aliens had expected humanity to surrender when faced with superior force. Instead, they found a species that responded to existential threat by becoming more dangerous. General Vexmore stared at his tactical display in disbelief. One primitive ship had disabled 2 of his scouts and was still operational. More disturbing, intelligence reports from the planet's surface showed increased activity in human military installations worldwide. Sir, his communications officer reported, nervously, we're intercepting transmissions from the planet. The humans appear to be mobilizing. Mobilizing for what? They have no space fleet. Unknown, sir, but their industrial output has increased by 300% in the last 6 hours. They're converting civilian factories to military production. Vexmore felt something he had never experienced in decades of conquest. Uncertainty. These humans were not behaving like any species he had ever encountered. They should be terrified, not angry. They should be seeking terms for surrender, not preparing for war. On the Defiance, Captain Morrison studied his tactical display. His ship was badly damaged and running on backup power. His weapons were nearly depleted. But somehow, impossibly, they were still fighting. Captain, Lisa Park called from the engine room. I've got an idea. It's completely insane. But it might work. Morrison smiled. At this point, insane sounds perfect. What do you have in mind? Well, if we can't outfight them with technology, maybe we can outthink them. I've been studying their ship designs from the debris we collected. They're built for efficiency and elegance. But that makes them predictable. Go on. What if we do something so stupid that they won't see it coming? As Park explained her plan, Morrison's smile grew wider. It was indeed completely insane. It violated every principle of space combat ever developed. It required precise timing, incredible luck, and a willingness to risk everything on a single desperate gamble. In other words, it was perfectly human. Amy, Morrison called to his communications officer. Send one more message to General Vexmore. Tell him that if he wants Earth, he's going to have to work for it. The battle for humanity's future was just beginning, and already the aliens were learning that their intelligence reports had been very, very wrong. 6 months had passed since the Defiance made its heroic last stand in the asteroid belt. Captain Morrison and his crew had died when their damaged ship finally succumbed to the alien weapons, but their sacrifice had given humanity something, precious time and proof that the invaders could be hurt. General Vexmore stood in his command center, staring at reports that made no sense. What should have been a simple conquest had become a nightmare that kept him awake during his sleep cycles. The humans were not behaving like any species he had ever encountered. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "the surface installations continue to multiply. We count over 2,000 new military facilities constructed in the past month alone." "How is that possible?" Vexmore demanded. "We destroyed their major military bases in the first week." "They're not building traditional bases, sir. They're converting civilian infrastructure. Subway tunnels have become command centers. Shopping centers are now weapons factories. Even their schools are being used for military training." Vexmore clicked his mandibles in frustration. When civilized species lost their military infrastructure, they surrendered. These humans simply made new infrastructure out of whatever they had available. Deep beneath New York City, Dr. Sandra Lee worked by the light of salvaged alien power cells. The converted subway station hummed with activity as teams of scientists and engineers worked around the clock. They had been studying every piece of alien technology they could recover from the early battles. "Maria, hand me that power coupling," Sandra called to her assistant, Maria Santos, a former high school teacher who had proven surprisingly adept at alien engineering. "This one?" Maria asked, holding up a device that glowed with soft blue light. "Perfect. Now watch this." Sandra connected the alien device to a human computer processor. The screen flickered, then displayed information in symbols none of them could read, but the energy readings were clear enough. "My God," whispered Tony Garcia, a mechanic from Los Angeles who had joined their team after his garage was destroyed in an alien bombing run. "It's working. Human and alien tech, working together." "Better than working together," Sandra said, with excitement. "It's working better than either technology alone. Look at these power efficiency readings." Across the city, similar scenes were playing out in hidden laboratories and makeshift workshops. Humanity was doing what it did best, taking someone else's superior technology and finding ways to improve it through sheer stubborn creativity. In a converted warehouse in Detroit, factory worker Pete Johnson supervised the assembly of what he called urban combat vehicles. They looked like construction equipment because that's exactly what they had been a week ago. Now they were armored, armed, and ready for street fighting. "Beth, how's the shield generator coming along?" Pete asked Beth Clark, a former NASA engineer who had joined his team after the space agency was destroyed in the first alien attacks. "Almost. Ready," Beth replied, connecting alien shield technology to a modified truck engine. "The power requirements are insane, but I think we can make it work for short bursts." "Short bursts are all we need," Pete said grimly. "Hit and run just like Captain Morrison taught us." The mention of Morrison's name brought a moment of silence. The captain had become a symbol of human resistance, and his final words before the Defiance exploded had been broadcast across every remaining human communication network. "Don't let them take our world. Make them pay for every inch." Above ground, alien patrols moved through the ruins of major cities, but they found no massed armies to fight. Instead, they encountered something far more frustrating. Humans who appeared from nowhere, struck hard, then vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Colonel Frank Miller crouched in the ruins of what had once been Washington, D.C., watching an alien patrol through his improvised scope. His unit consisted of soldiers, police officers, firefighters, and ordinary citizens who had refused to evacuate when the aliens arrived. "Target acquired," whispered Sergeant Nancy Price, a retired Navy officer who had come out of retirement when the invasion began. Her sniper rifle was a hybrid of human craftsmanship and alien technology, built by Dr. Helen Chang's engineering team in their underground laboratory. Take the shot, Miller ordered. The alien patrol leader dropped, his advanced armor no match for human ingenuity. The rest of the patrol scrambled for cover, but the humans were already moving. Within seconds, they had vanished into the subway tunnels that had become humanity's hidden highway system. In space, the war was not going as General Vexmore had planned either. Captain Steve Adams commanded a flotilla of converted mining ships and cargo haulers that had somehow become humanity's new space navy. His flagship was a massive ore carrier that should never have been able to fight military vessels, but human engineers had found a way. Linda, what's our weapon status? Adams asked his chief engineer, Linda Scott, who had learned her trade working on space stations before the war. The railgun is charged and ready, Captain, Linda replied. And I've got a surprise for our alien friends. Remember that gravity manipulation device we salvaged from their command ship last month? The one Dr. Rachel Kim said was too dangerous to use? That's the one. Well, Gary Chen and I figured out how to make it less dangerous, mostly. Adams grinned. Gary Chen was a former diplomat who had turned out to be surprisingly good at military tactics once the shooting started. Define mostly. There's only a 30% chance it will tear our ship apart, Linda said cheerfully. I like those odds. Prepare to engage. The human fleet struck the alien supply convoy with tactics that defied all military logic. Instead of forming battle lines, they scattered like insects, using asteroids and debris for cover. Instead of engaging in honorable ship-to-ship combat, they targeted supply lines and communication relays. Most disturbing of all, they had somehow learned to use captured alien technology better than the aliens themselves. The gravity manipulation device that Linda had modified created a localized space distortion that pulled 3 alien ships together, causing them to collide in a spectacular explosion. Impossible, breathed Commander Hexra as he watched the tactical display. They shouldn't be able to operate our technology at all, much less improve it. Send a message to the Galactic Council, Vexmore ordered. Request immediate reinforcements. These humans are not behaving according to any known patterns of warfare. But even as he sent the message, Vexmore knew it would take months for reinforcements to arrive. Meanwhile, the humans grew stronger every day. They had learned to manufacture hybrid weapons that combined the best of both technologies. They had developed new tactics that turned their weaknesses into advantages. Most terrifying of all, they seemed to become more determined with each defeat, not less. In her underground laboratory, Dr. Sandra Lee made a discovery that would change everything. She had been working with a piece of alien communication equipment, trying to understand how their faster-than-light messaging system worked. "Tony, come look at this," she called excitedly. Tony Garcia hurried over, wiping alien coolant fluid from his hands. "What did you find?" "I cracked their communication protocols. I can intercept their messages." Sandra's voice grew quiet with amazement. "And Tony, I know where they came from. I know where their home base is located." The information spread through the human resistance network like wildfire. Within hours, every cell leader knew the coordinates of the Galactic Council on Nexus Prime. More importantly, they knew that the aliens had never expected humanity to develop interstellar travel capability. In a secret facility, hidden in the mountains of Colorado, engineer Paul Kim looked at the alien technology they had captured and reverse-engineered. His team included the best minds from NASA, private aerospace companies, and universities that no longer existed above ground. "Can we do it?" asked Dr. Helen Chang, who had become the chief science advisor for the human resistance. Paul studied the designs they had developed. It was part human engineering, part alien technology, and part pure desperation. The ship they were planning shouldn't be possible, but then again, nothing humans had accomplished in the past 6 months should have been possible. "Yes," he said finally. "We can build an interstellar ship. It won't be pretty and it won't be safe, but it will get us there." "How long?" Helen asked. Helen, 6 weeks if we strip every piece of alien tech from every captured ship on Earth. Do it. As work began on humanity's first interstellar vessel, the resistance fighters on Earth continued their impossible war. They had learned something that the aliens were only beginning to understand. Humans didn't fight to win battles. They fought to make sure their enemies regretted starting the fight in the first place. General Vexmore received confirmation that his reinforcement request had been approved, but the ships wouldn't arrive for 3 months. He wondered if he would still be alive to see them. These humans had a disturbing habit of targeting command structures, and they were getting better at it every day. As he looked at the latest casualty reports, Vexmore began to understand what Ambassador Zektar had tried to warn them about. The key: humans weren't just defending their world. They were learning, adapting, and preparing for something much bigger. He just didn't realize yet that they were preparing to take the war directly to the Galactic Council itself. 1 year had passed since the first alien ships appeared over Earth. The war that was supposed to last 1 day had dragged on through 4 seasons of increasingly desperate fighting. Now something impossible was happening in the most heavily defended star system in the galaxy. Ambassador Zektar stood in his private chambers on Nexus Prime, watching the security alerts flood his communication panel. An unknown vessel had somehow penetrated the outer defense grid and was approaching the capital world. His scales tingled with a mixture of fear and grim satisfaction. He had a terrible feeling he knew exactly who was coming to visit. The ship that emerged from hyperspace looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. It was clearly built from multiple technologies with human angular designs welded to smooth alien curves. Weapon ports jutted out at odd angles, and the entire hull seemed to be covered in improvised armor plating. It looked like it had been built in someone's garage, which was not far from the truth. Admiral Carol Wright stood on the bridge of the Retribution, humanity's first interstellar warship. Around her, the crew worked at stations that were half human design, half alien technology. The ship should not have been able to fly, much less cross the galaxy, but human engineers had made it work through pure stubborn determination. "Rob, what's our tactical status?" Carol asked her weapons officer, Rob Davis, a former Air Force pilot who had learned to fight aliens the hard way. "All systems green, Admiral," Rob replied. "The hybrid weapons are charged and ready. Gary's diplomatic. Packages prepared for transmission." Gary Chen sat at the communication station, no longer the polite diplomat he had been before the war. Months of fighting had changed all of them. "Their defense fleet is moving to intercept," he reported. 300 ships, same class as the ones that attacked Earth. "How ironic," Carol said quietly. "Linda, how's our special cargo?" "Secure and ready for deployment," Linda Scott replied from the engineering station. "Though I still think this plan is completely insane. The best human plans usually are," Carol said with a grim smile. In the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions had been called as soon as the human ship was detected. Representatives from 47 worlds gathered in panicked confusion. This was not supposed to be possible. The humans were supposed to be a primitive species trapped in their own star system. "How did they get here?" demanded General Vexmore, who had returned from Earth with only half his original fleet and a haunted look in his eyes. "More importantly," added Admiral Kexrath, "how did they find us? The location of Nexus Prime is classified at the highest levels." Ambassador Zektar took his place at the speaking platform. Unlike a year ago, every council member was paying attention now. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "they learned the location from the ships you left scattered around their solar system." The chamber fell silent. The implication was clear. The humans had not just survived the invasion, they had captured alien technology and learned to use it. "Impossible," Council Member Thisara protested. "No species has ever mastered our technology so quickly." "These humans appear to specialize in doing impossible things," Zektar replied. "I tried to warn you about this." The debate was interrupted by an incoming transmission. The main display activated, showing the bridge of the human ship. A woman in a strange uniform appeared, flanked by other humans at alien-looking control. "Stations. Greetings," Admiral Wright said, her voice carrying clearly across the chamber. "I am Admiral Carol Wright of the Earth Defense Force. We need to talk." The council members stared in shock. The primitive species they had dismissed was now addressing them as equals from a ship that had penetrated their most secure system. "This is outrageous," General Vexmore shouted. "You are in violation of restricted space. Surrender immediately." Admiral Wright's expression didn't change. "General, I believe you're confused about who should be surrendering to whom. Dr. Kim, please show them our demonstration." On the human ship, Dr. Rachel Kim activated the device they had built from captured alien technology. It was based on the gravity manipulation systems they had reverse engineered, but human scientists had found ways to make it far more powerful than the original designers had thought possible. The effect was immediate and terrifying. One of Nexus, Prime's 3 moons, suddenly shifted in its orbit, moving several thousand kilometers in a matter of minutes. The gravitational disturbance sent shockwaves through the planet's oceans and atmosphere. Then, just as suddenly, the moon was placed back in its exact original position. The Galactic Council sat in stunned silence. The humans had just demonstrated that they could move celestial bodies at will. The implications were beyond frightening. "As you can see," Admiral Wright continued calmly, "we've made some improvements to your technology. We could have moved your planet instead of your moon, but we thought that might be considered rude." Ambassador Zektar felt a chill run through his scales. These humans had not come to negotiate from a position of weakness. They had come to dictate terms from a position of overwhelming strength. "What do you want?" Council member Thisera asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Simple," Admiral Wright replied. "Complete withdrawal of all hegemony forces from human space, reparations for the damage caused by your invasion, formal recognition of humanity as a sovereign species with territorial rights, and a guarantee that no alien force will ever again threaten Earth." "Impossible," General Vexmore protested. "The hegemony does not negotiate with primitives." Gary Chen leaned forward at his station. "General, you seem to be operating under a misunderstanding. We're not negotiating, we're informing you of the new reality." Rob Davis added helpfully, "We have 17 more ships like this one under construction back home. Would you like a demonstration of their combined firepower?" The threat hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The humans were not bluffing. They had somehow gone from a barely spacefaring species to a galactic superpower in the span of 1 year. "How?" Admiral Kexrath asked weakly. "How did you advance so quickly?" Linda Scott smiled from her engineering station. "You attacked our home. That was a mistake. Humans have a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Apparently, your invasion didn't kill us." Admiral Wright stood from her command chair. "We'll give you 72 hours to consider our terms. After that, we'll consider the lack of response to be a rejection, and we'll proceed accordingly." The transmission ended, leaving the Galactic Council in chaos. Representatives shouted at each other, blaming everyone for the disaster that had befallen them. Some demanded immediate military action, while others insisted on surrender. "Ambassador," Zektar watched the panic with sad satisfaction. He had tried to warn them, but they had refused to listen. Now they were facing the consequences of their arrogance. 3 days later, the Terra Accords were signed in the same chamber where the invasion had been approved. The terms were exactly as Admiral Wright had dictated. The hegemony withdrew from human space, paid massive reparations, and formally recognized Earth as a sovereign power. More importantly, humanity was granted a seat on the Galactic Council, with Ambassador Zektar serving as their primary liaison. It was a role he accepted with mixed feelings, knowing that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. 6 months after the signing, construction began on humanity's first starbase. Project manager Susan Clark oversaw the massive construction effort, which used both human and alien workers. The base would serve as headquarters for Earth's growing interstellar fleet. Admiral Wright, now commanding a force of 50 hybrid warships, received daily reports from exploration vessels pushing deeper into uncharted space. Humanity was no longer content to stay in their own solar system. They were expanding, exploring, and making their presence felt throughout the galaxy. The other species watched this expansion with nervous fascination. The humans had proven they were not to be underestimated. More concerning, they had shown a disturbing tendency to improve upon any technology they encountered, often in ways the original designers had never imagined. In his final report to the Galactic Council, Ambassador Zektar wrote, "The humans have taught us a valuable lesson about the dangers of assumption. We assumed that advanced technology meant advanced civilization. We assumed that primitive appearance meant primitive capability. We assumed that overwhelming force would guarantee easy victory. He paused in his writing, looking out at the stars where human ships now patrolled alongside alien vessels in an uneasy but stable peace. The humans have a saying, he continued, that we would be wise to remember. Hold my beer and watch this. It is not a boast or a threat. It is a warning. When humans say those words, they are about to attempt something that should be impossible. And as we have learned to our cost, humans have a disturbing tendency to succeed at impossible things. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity, not because they were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they refused to accept that anything was truly impossible. They had turned their greatest weakness into their greatest strength. When faced with superior force, humans didn't surrender. They got creative, and that creativity had changed the galaxy forever.